two cars there. On the right, the Brabham, and on the left, the Williams of Carlos Reutemann is one of the two Lotuses. And incidentally, Britisher Nigel Mansell has driven a storming practice. He was at one point in 5th fastest position, finished up in 8th place on the grid on the 4th row. And the car on the right of the two behind the two lead cars is Elio De Angelis. The two cars on the left, you can just see Alan Jones's car, the world champion, coming into the picture, and he's lining up between Carlos Reutemann and Nelson Piquet. That's significant. So it looks as though Alan Jones is going to try for a flyer when the lights go from red to green, and then the 77 lap, 196.3 miles South African Grand Prix will be on. The lap record, which certainly won't be broken today, because quite apart from the weather conditions, we have to remember that last year's lap record was put up by René Arnoux in a turbocharged Renault. This course is 6,000 feet up, and the turbocharged cars, of which there are none here, have a distinct advantage. So the fastest lap in practice was put up by Nelson Piquet, 1 minute 12.78, which is faster than last year's official lap record, but not nearly as fast as the pole. And now they are coming up and away. And past it, Piquet leading. Elio De Angelis goes up into 2nd place. Carlos Reutemann drops back into 3rd. Alan Jones trying to get through on the inside. And just look at that spray. It must be absolute murder for anybody who is behind the lead. Round Crowthorne Corner, Nelson Piquet leading. This is a 3rd gear point now. Piquet streaking away towards Barbecue Bend. Look at the lead that he's got. It's Elio De Angelis in 2nd place, and in 3rd place it's Jan Lammers, the Dutch driver in the ATS. Piquet. There is De Angelis. There is Jan Lammers. Well up there is Carlos Reutemann. Behind Reutemann is Ricardo Zunino, the Argentine driver in the 2nd Brabham, because Hector Ribat, the Mexican driver, has got hepatitis and is not starting. That is the leader. That is Piquet, young Nelson Piquet, number 5, 28 years old. He's round now towards the S's. He's past Ford corner, and Lammers is challenging De Angelis as they go into the S's. Now up to West Bank, and of course De Angelis and Lammers will be tending to slow each other up as they're fighting for that 2nd position and giving Nelson Piquet a chance to break away. James.
Yes, a great start by Nelson Piquet. Murray did everything right. He's got a lovely situation going on behind him, as the other guys having a bit of a set to fighting it out. Brilliant start by Lammers. He's come from 9th on the grid, right up into 3rd place. He's a very good wet weather driver. He's got terrific car control, a lot of talent. These conditions, as long as they persist, should definitely suit Lammers. We'll be watching with interest to see if John Watson can make some impression from a lowly grid position, because in this morning's wet practice session, Watson was very quick indeed. In fact, while he was running, he was the quickest car. Lammers having a go there, and oops, and Lammers and De Angelis are touched. Lammers desperately fighting not to hit anything. Let's just hope he hasn't damaged his car at all. Well, he's got it going again. No, I think there's some damage to the car. It's snaking badly, I'm afraid. That's a great shame. Lammers was having a go at De Angelis. They're both hard guys, and they tangled.
So, Elio De Angelis holds that 2nd place and undoubtedly damaged skirts on Jan Lammers' car, the ATS, the man who did so well in qualifying 4th fastest for Long Beach in the same make of car last year. He's effectively out of the race because a lot of people passed him, and that's Ford Corner. That's the new corner that's been renamed, was Clubhouse Corner, and you can see how slippery it is, and you can see too that Carlos Reutemann in the 2nd of the two Williams cars, Alan Jones, the world champion, behind him. And as they come up to complete the 2nd lap, I'll give you them as they go past our commentary position. But it is Nelson Piquet well away now. Piquet leading at the end of lap 2 out of 77, and there is the Brazilian World Championship 2nd place last year. Over the line goes Piquet in the lead at the end of lap 2. Then in 2nd position behind Piquet as he goes down into Marlborough Corner, a long lead. It's De Angelis. Reutemann is 3rd. Mansell, Nigel Mansell, is in 4th position. The Englishman, Nigel Mansell, is in 4th position, and you could just see him in that ball of spray behind Reutemann's car. There is Mansell. Behind Mansell is John Watson. Behind John Watson is Alan Jones, well down. Then Riccardo Zunino. There goes the Brabham round the bend. And now the sun is coming out, and I'm looking hard down the circuit to see whether the rain has stopped. I'm looking at the surface of a puddle, but you can see that Piquet is throwing up spray, the car drifting sideways as he goes round that left-hander, and now into clubhouse, into Ford corner again, up towards the S's, a very tricky section. Now, but let's hope that we'll see the second place battle, because it's developing into something as Piquet goes up to the S's, 3rd gear this is, well over 10,000 revs, and that's about 128 miles an hour. Now he's going up towards West Bank corner and up towards the kink into the straight in 5th gear, and it is 165 miles an hour along the fastest part of this course. Nelson Piquet leading, and this is the end of lap 3 out of 77, and it rather looks already as though the Brazilian has got the race in his pocket, because just look at that gap. Nelson Piquet with almost the length of the straight as the second man bursts into sight, and it is 22-year-old Elio De Angelis from Rome. Reutemann is still 3rd, Mansell 4th, John Watson 5th, Alan Jones is 6th. Derek Daly has come up right through the field in the march. Derek Daly in the John McDonald and Robin Herd march is up into 7th place. And there was the Irishman. You just saw him going round the corner. We're looking at De Angelis in 2nd place.
A wonderful start to the season for Nelson Piquet. He's really showing terrific form at the moment. He's built up a huge lead, considering they've only done 3.5 laps already. And he's not letting up for one moment. He's really trying. You can see him throwing the car about, sliding all over the place. Marvellous stuff for him.
But there is De Angelis, 2nd place. This young Italian who's taken over the Lotus team leader role with the defection, as it were, of Mario Andretti, who has gone to Alfa Romeo. And look at the battle for 3rd. That's Mansell challenging Carlos Reutemann, and Mansell is through. Lotus is 2nd and 3rd, and Nigel Mansell is through into 3rd position in only his 2nd Grand Prix that he looks like finishing. He's driven in some other Grand Prix, and now that's John Watson, a good wet weather driver. John Watson is up into 4th position and challenging Mansell as they come through to complete lap 4. Good battle as over the line goes Piquet.
Yes, Watson's in ideal position now to have a go at Mansell. He's done a marvellous job. He's had a lot of trouble with his cars running on the dry track, but as soon as it was wet this morning, he was very quick indeed, and he's come right through the field from 15th place on the grid.
So you look at the battle for 2nd position as on lap 5 in what is turning out to be a very exciting South African Grand Prix. In the lead is Nelson Piquet. In 2nd position, Elio De Angelis. In 3rd position, Nigel Mansell. 4th, John Watson. And in 5th place, Carlos Reutemann.
Ja, dit was natuurlijk een opname geweest van die begin van die wedren en 3/4 uur gelede, precies om 2 uur het die mannen weggespring. Ek moet eintlik nie sê die mannen nie, want Desiree Wilson is ook onder hulle. Sy het ongelukkig nie baie goed weggespring nie. Watson het ook al 'n slag intussen in die kuipe beland, maar so 'n bietjie later vanmiddag dan sal ons vir u weer inligting gee oor hoe sake op Kyalami.
A reminder that you can see the running of the Richelieu Guineas at Milnerton at 2 minutes past 5. And our next cricket crossing to Newlands in Cape Town will be at 5 past 3. But right now, time to go over to Kyalami, where the South African Grand Prix has been going for just an hour.
And on lap 40 out of 77, we look at John Watson, the Englishman, followed by Andrea De Cesaris, the Italian star, going round the new Marlborough corner, which used to be called Crowthorne. And it's turning into a really exciting South African Grand Prix of 1981, because leading is the Argentine driver Carlos Reutemann in the Williams, the man who won at Monaco last year, finished 3rd in the championship. And we've just had the dramatic news that Carlos Reutemann started the race on slick tyres, which are designed essentially for dry conditions. There he is. So for the opening stages of the race, Reutemann must have been battling to retain control in tyres that were totally unsuitable, whereas Nelson Piquet, who is in second position, and Piquet is now some 12 seconds, and he's one of these two cars that are coming up to the new Marlborough Bend now. It's the two Brabhams together, Nelson Piquet and his teammate Riccardo Zunino, as we look at Carlos Reutemann, the race leader. Reutemann on lap 41 out of 77. The Argentine driver was probably not feeling too happy when he began this race, because, as I said earlier on, he spent an agonizing period yesterday in practice when he went off the course at Sunset Bend into the catch fencing, which wrapped itself round the car and round him, forced his head back and was actually strangling him until the marshals could get to him and free him. So Reutemann missed the second practice yesterday because he was in pain and unhappy, and who can blame him? And he's come out in this race today, started it on slick tyres, he's finishing another lap, goes over the line, and he has now completed 41 laps. And again, I have got the stopwatch running to see what the gap between him and the second place man, Nelson Piquet, is coming up to the line now. It's the leader of these two cars is, and the answer is 13.41 seconds, so the gap is extending. Carlos Reutemann is increasing his lead over Nelson Piquet. Zunino, Piquet's teammate, has been lapped, of course, but is in 7th position as we look at Reutemann. The circuit clear, but not for very long, because now we should be seeing Nelson Piquet coming into sight as Reutemann has gone away from Ford Corner on towards the S's, and West Bank, there is the Brabham. Carlos Reutemann bursts out over the dip. He's doing about 165 miles an hour as he comes down to Marlborough Bend, puts it into second gear, changes up into third as he goes past the apex, accelerates up to about 10,600 RPM in fourth gear, which is 150 miles an hour, onto Barbecue Bend, which is where he is now. And all the time he's extending his lead. It's now 14.2 seconds between him and Nelson Piquet. And I am beginning to wonder whether the third place man, Elio De Angelis, is going to be able to do anything about Piquet, who is in second place. I was talking earlier on this race, as Reutemann goes through the picture, about Nigel Mansell, the British driver, who dropped down and is now has fought his way up. After having had a spin and coming in to change tyres, he's up into 9th position. The positions at the end of the 42nd lap in this truly stirring South African Grand Prix, which has had just about everything. There are the first 6. Reutemann in the Williams, Piquet in the Brabham, De Angelis Lotus, John Watson, who led at one point in the Marlborough McLaren, Keke Rosberg, the Finnish driver, in the Fittipaldi car, the new car, and Riccardo Patrese, the Italian, in the Arrows.
Nou ja, ons sal so oor 20 minute.
Well, more cricket from Newlands at 3:25, and until then, back to the Kyalami circuit and the South African Grand Prix.
Comes into the pits. Desiree Wilson is still in the pits, as Reutemann on those, to him, very hard tyres, because these Aurora Formula 1 tyres are a much harder compound than the tyres that Reutemann will have been using for the same sort of conditions last year. They therefore don't give as much grip on the circuit, and I reckon they're about 2 seconds a lap slower than last year's Formula 1 Grand Prix tyres, as Reutemann comes over the crest of the hill. And it looks to me as though Desiree Wilson, yes, she is, I can tell you, as you watch Reutemann, that Desiree Wilson is out of the race. Her car is being pushed away in the pits. Desiree, the South African woman driver, the best we've ever had in Grand Prix, has taken her helmet off and is out of the South African Grand Prix. Bitter disappointment for her. Perhaps some consolation that her teammate Eddie Cheever is still in the running, but I'm quite sure she would rather still be in the running herself. Carlos Reutemann, the leader, lap 57. No change for the first 6 places. But I remind you that Keke Rosberg in the Fittipaldi car moved up into 4th position on lap 52 and has held that position. There is Desiree Wilson. Get very hot in a racing motor car, of course, having a drink. Very, very disappointed. Carlos Reutemann, that you are looking at now, closing up on Riccardo Patrese in the Orange Arrows car, is still in the lead. Nelson Piquet is still chasing him, but whilst he closed up at the rate of a second a lap for some 3-4 laps, there is Piquet. The gap is now some 12.6 seconds, and Carlos Reutemann is very much in charge of this South African Grand Prix. He won the South African Grand Prix in 1974, Reutemann. He is the only driver in this race to have won it before. He was in a Brabham when he won it in 1974. And listeners, viewers in South Africa will be disappointed, as everybody around the circuit is, to hear that their own Desiree Wilson, the best Formula 1 Grand Prix woman driver there has been in the history of motor racing, is out of the race. She has retired her Tyrrell car, has got out of it, and is disappointedly sitting on the pit counter now. We watched Reutemann and the very hard to pass Riccardo Patrese in the Arrows, moving over actually and letting Reutemann through to come through and complete his 58th lap. Into Marlborough Corner. That's the longest straight in Grand Prix racing, the straight with the kink in it, which goes all the way from West Bank to Marlborough Corner and is absolutely flat out. And now they're round Barbecue Bend up to the Yunkskai sweep, then into Sunset Bend, the right-hander. Sunset leads up to the newly named Ford Corner, which is a second gear, 100 miles an hour, believe it or not, round that bend. Then accelerate away up to the S's. Third gear, that's some 130 miles an hour around there. 10,000 RPM from the Ford Cosworth V8 500 horsepower engine. Up the incline to the newly named West Bank Corner, which was Leeuwkop. And now up to the kink again, and this is the race leader, Monaco Grand Prix winner of 1980, third in the World Championship, winner of the South African Grand Prix in 1974, over the line, Carlos Reutemann. There behind him are Keke Rosberg. Keke Rosberg just ahead of Reutemann. There's number 20, the Fittipaldi car. And the gap between Reutemann, which is the second of these two cars, and Nelson Piquet is 13.98 seconds. Reutemann right with the fourth place man as we look at Piquet driving very hard indeed. Reutemann coming up and trying to get past Keke Rosberg, who seemingly will have nothing of it. Out of Ford Corner, Rosberg still ahead. Not at all anxious to be lapped by Carlos Reutemann.
Yes, it's okay in fact, because he's of course got he's under some pressure with his battle with Watson. Reutemann's in a comfortable lead, so he's not in a great hurry to get through, and there he goes, slipping through pretty easily. I think a race leader in that situation realises that other people have got their battles. He's not in a hurry. Rosberg would know, have a pretty good idea of what's going on.
Well, Carlos Reutemann with the fourth place man, Keke Rosberg, behind him, with John Watson in fifth place, not so far behind Rosberg, who is still right in Reutemann's slipstream as they come down to Marlborough Corner, and determined to hang on to the Argentinian. Watson round the corner, and Carlos Reutemann, the man who lives in Cap Ferrat in France, is on his way now within sight of his 11th Grand Prix victory in his 15 years of experience. This is his 130th Grand Prix, and this would be the 11th Grand Prix that he's won if he gets home in first place, and I qualify always, because until the driver sees the checkered flag, he has not won the race. But it will be another wonderful moment for Frank Williams, the Williams team owner and leader, and his colleague Patrick Head, who so superbly designs these Williams cars and manages to keep ahead of the opposition. Let us not lose sight, however, of the fact that fine a race as this South African Grand Prix of 1981 has been, it has lacked three very important ingredients. One of those ingredients is called Ferrari, another of those ingredients is called Alfa Romeo, and the third ingredient is the Renault team. And they're not here because of the bitter battle which is going on in motor racing about who should control it. And so there are six very important cars, any one of which could well have run, because the turbo Renaults won last year. The new Ferraris are turbo cars. Nelson Piquet, that's 272.81 kilometres, so Piquet's going quicker than anybody. I can't rapidly translate that into miles an hour, so I can't tell you how it compares with the fastest lap, since the time wasn't given, but the fastest lap time last year was that of René Arnoux, 1 minute 13.15 seconds. And Carlos Reutemann, as we look at Frank Williams, is now leading by 16 seconds and is increasing his lead over Nelson Piquet, and they are on lap 72 out of 77. So, with 5 laps to go in the 1981 South African Grand Prix, which started off with a very wet circuit and has gradually dried out, which has seen several race leaders, Nelson Piquet, John Watson. Now the leader is Carlos Reutemann, as he has been for a good few laps now. We're looking at him, he's in the Saudia Leyland Williams car, on his way to his 11th Grand Prix win in his 130 Grand Prix series of races over his 15 years of experience, and he's gradually increasing his lead over the second place man, the Brazilian Nelson Piquet in the Brabham. It has progressively gone up from 11 seconds to nearly 17 seconds now, as he comes up to West Bank behind the second of the two Brabham cars, that of Ricardo Zunino, the Argentine driver, who has taken the place of Hector Ribac, the number 2 Brabham driver, the Mexican, who was not able to start because of hepatitis. Carlos Reutemann moves over, Zunino lets him through, and we'll see what the gap is between Carlos Reutemann as he and Zunino go into Marlborough Corner at the end of the long straight. The gap between Reutemann and Nelson Piquet, who is in second position. I'm waiting for Piquet now. There he goes over the line, 17.82 seconds in third position, and the only man apart from Piquet not to have been lapped by Carlos Reutemann. It's still Elio De Angelis, the Lotus team leader. Fourth place, and lapped, of course, just been lapped, is Keke Rosberg, the Finnish driver. And in fifth position, it's John Watson, who at one time led the race in the Marlborough McLaren. In sixth place, it is Riccardo Patrese, followed in seventh place by Zunino, the man who has just been lapped by Reutemann. James, a good race, a challenging one from your point of view?
Well, I think the first half of the race was very exciting, and particularly brave decision of Reutemann's to start on dry tyres. It was very much a gamble, and as the results showed, in view of the fact that we were well into the race when other people started to change, it was an extremely close run thing, because Reutemann did in fact emerge with just a 7-second lead once Piquet, the wet weather leader as it were, had made his pit stop. So all in all, a brave decision, and I think, but it's quite possible that Reutemann would be exactly where he is now had he done it the other way around and started on wets like everybody else. There's very little to choose in it.
And it's worth repeating too that Reutemann went off badly in practice yesterday. Didn't damage the car too much, but had the terrifying experience of nearly being strangled to death by catch fencing wire, which was wrapped round his neck before the marshals could get to him and free him. And it was a very unhappy but an incredibly placid Carlos Reutemann, who was reporting the incident in the control tower when I was there yesterday, and a very, very unpleasant experience. Reutemann, and that's the ensign, I think, in the background of Mark Surer, who is out of the race, parked by the side of the circuit, as Carlos Reutemann, with Nelson Piquet not within striking distance of him now, comes up and crosses the line to complete his 75th lap in the 1981 South African Grand Prix, to enter his 76th and penultimate lap with a very comfortable cushion of some 17 to 18, maybe more, as I talk to you, seconds between him and the second place man, Nelson Piquet. In fact, it's 19.84 seconds. And other fine performances in this race. Alan Jones, of course, the world champion, who fought his way up to third place before he went out of the race with a series of tyre changes. John Watson, who led in the McLaren before dropping back. Nigel Mansell, one of the stars of this race, the British driver, number 2 officially in the Lotus team now, very much making a name for himself in Grand Prix racing. He's still in the running in 10th position because he's had 2 stops for tyres, and he had a spin earlier on in the very wet conditions. And now here is Reutemann over the kink, 165 miles an hour as he comes into the top straight, goes past the grandstand to complete shortly his 76th lap. He's done it. He's now into his last lap as he brakes and goes down into second gear to take it at some 10,000 RPM. Marlborough Corner, which used to be called Crowthorne, of course, drops downhill to the right-hander at Barbecue. The circuit now perfectly dry, and proving that Reutemann took the right gamble when he decided to start this very wet race on slick tyres. He's past the Jungskai sweep. He's now on his way to Sunset Bend, round it, which he takes at some 140 miles an hour. These Formula 1 cars of today are so stable, it seems difficult to believe they're going as fast as they are. Into the S's for the last time. Out of the S's, the right-hander climbing up towards West Bank Corner to put it into 5th gear to approach the fastest part of the course. And Reutemann, as he crests the rise, could undoubtedly kick the clutch home, put it into neutral, coast home, and still win the South African Grand Prix. But he won't need to do that. The Williams is as reliable as ever. The checkered flag is threaded. Over the line goes Carlos Reutemann. So now, where is Nelson Piquet? There is the checkered flag. Reutemann is the winner. Nelson Piquet is going to finish. There is the Brazilian finishing in second place, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Elio De Angelis finishing in third place with, it looks like, Chico Serra right behind him, but Serra, of course, has been lapped. So, a win in the 1981 South African Grand Prix for Carlos Reutemann. The man who won at Monaco last year, was third in the 1980 World Championship. In second position was Nelson Piquet, who was second in the World Championship last year. In third position, Elio De Angelis, and only those 3 have done the full 77 laps of the South African Grand Prix. So, a race of changes, first wet, then dry, a race of leadership changes. John Watson led and Reutemann led. But in the end, it was Carlos Reutemann with yet another win, and a very deserved one for the Williams team.